Welcome to the world of stand-up. I'm going to try this different because usually, for whatever reason, I kind of forget to introduce my guest. And so I'm choosing to have that no longer be associated with my part of this show. So, Felicia, thank you for coming on stand-up.
Thank you.
What is your last name?
Marie.
Felicia Marie. And
Marie,
you are
like Marie.
Murray?
Yeah.
Like Maori?
Kind of.
It's M-U-R...
M-A.
Read it in the show notes, okay? I'm never going to say that name again in the next hour and change.
Marie.
Marie.
Yeah.
Felicia
like
Marie.
Maria.
Like Lisa Marie.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
Is that your actual last name?
That's my middle name.
Oh, so you do that?
I do that.
That's fair. Okay.
We're not going to go into that this time.
No, we're not. Well, now that you're saying that, they're going to want to. But since I'm directing traffic here, we're not going to do that.
Okay, cool.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
You are a hypnotherapist?
I am.
Okay. This is going to be fun. I can't wait to learn more about exactly what this is because I've had some experience with hypnotherapy, very limited. Mm-hmm. But before we turned the mics and camera on, we were discussing something that piqued my interest, and I wanted to go back on this.
All right, let's do it.
We were joking about identity and things and vaginas, and I made a comment.
I like that word, but that's not the actual term.
Vagina is the actual term.
It is not. It is vulva.
Vulva.
Or pussy.
Well, pussy is slang.
It could be. It originated way back before it was slang.
You know the origin of pussy.
I do.
Okay.
And I have one.
Let's put a pin in this. I want to finish the other thought. You said that energetically there is something that happens differently to children when they're born vaginally versus or vulvically or whatever through the door versus the zipper.
So we'll say vaginally is like the medical term. That's what they say in the medical term.
But
in
if
the
they're
dictionary
in the medical term, are they saying it wrong though?
Yes.
For the sake of it's
and
almost like
did you know that all gynecologists are men? Like all gynecologists started from men.
I figured.
Like men created that.
I figured.
But they don't have one.
They don't have a gyno?
They don't have a pussy.
I don't know if you know what year it is, but
Oh, is that what Trump would normally say?
No, like I'm being facetious, but it's like we're in this weird sort of like pseudo world where we're supposed to actually try to acknowledge silly things like that. Mm-hmm. Like we say birthing people now. Anyway.
Wait, what?
Yeah. You know where I'm taking that.
I know where you're taking that.
Okay, so let's, again, another pin. This is going to look like a pin cushion by the time we're done with this.
All right. So
what happens differently on an energetic level between a vaginal birth and a C-section? What were you referencing? What were you saying that?
So when you go through the birth canal,
you
take your mom's microbiome, and that sets you up for everything in life. So I'm talking about like depression, anxiety, mental health.
The microbiome of the hallway. The
hallway is where the microbiome is, and your mom passes it on to you, and that sets you up for life. It's your whole endocrine system, your immune system, everything comes from the birth canal. So let's connect the dots on why physicians are heavily pushing C-sections and not allowing VBACs. And
what's a VBAC?
Like if you do a C-section, they will not let you have a vaginal delivery afterwards.
So that's not actual medicine. That's just preference of the doctor?
That's preference of the doctors because they make way more money on a C-section.
Wait. Are you telling me the medical profession is influenced by money? Get out of here.
Off record?
Okay,
no.
so what are the differences then? So is it actually more taking out the financial interest of the doctor?
Yes.
Let's look at the personal experience of the individual that's birthed because they come out it's vaginal or C-section.
Yep.
What are the differences?
Everything.
Okay, so that's a lot.
Literally.
Can you dive in a little deeper on everything?
Yes, your gut
Okay.
is a brain.
Yes.
And it weighs more than this brain.
Yes.
And you have more signaling from this brain through your body than you do this brain. 80% of serotonin, dopamine, GABA, norepinephrine is developed here in the gut, not up here. And there's this bidirectional pathway called the vagus nerve in which they communicate. When you go through a C-section, it affects your vagus nerve. So it cuts off communication between the two brains. And if they're not communicating, every system in your body is affected by it. So autoimmune disorders, mental health disorders, metabolic disorders, brain disorders are all connected to that. They've connected them. And I'll reference a book of The Professional because this is not my I am certified in this, but I'm not the professional in it or the expert. But his name's Dr. Emran Meyer, and he wrote a book called The Mind-Gut Connection. And he was able to connect that this ecosystem is connected to the planet's ecosystem directly. And that's why everybody grounds.
It makes sense now why you're such a big proponent of psychedelics and mushrooms and things, because I was listening to a podcast Joe Rogan had on Paul Stamets, who is just the guy in the whole, fungus world.
Yep.
And I'm remembering as I'm listening to you that he had described a similar thing, that like fungus have this sort of ecosystem through everything, and it includes us. We're a part of it. We think we're the kings of the jungle here, and fungus are handling all this stuff.
And it's mycelium, actually.
Yeah, that's what he said. He had some hat that was like anyway.
Oh,
okay, I consider myself to be pretty normal and balanced and healthy and all that, but if I was C-section, what would have been different had I gone the other door number 2?
Well, have you had any like physical imbalances in life? Like, did you ever experience headaches growing up, gut health issues, indigestion, constipation?
Everybody experiences those.
It's directly correlative to that experience and being in the womb.
Hold on. So that's, I kind of call bullshit on that. Like, how is it possible that you don't have those experiences if you just are born normally?
Let's just say that we'll just put this out there. A C-section baby, and in our arena right now, how we're living, a vaginal baby, they could have very similar expressions of symptoms in life right now, regardless.
Is that because of food?
It's
or
because of the level of toxins
okay.
and trauma. Those are the two things that change the nervous system, directly affect the nervous system, the vagus nerve, and the brains.
Dude, I think about my oldest daughter. She's 20 years old right now. And she has all sorts of issues, and she was a C-section child.
Yeah. It's traumatizing. It's actual trauma.
It's less traumatizing to go to be vaginally birthed than C-section.
Yes.
Why? Because the way they sell it to you, it's like there's no, like the head doesn't get, like it's...
We're literally talking about the most natural fucking process on the planet. And they're saying this is not natural. Let's go this route. What is their agenda?
This is blowing my mind.
Think about it. This was made to expand and birth life. Like a woman's womb is her portal.
Okay, I understand that, but like the thing going through it has got to have its own experience of that. So it's an easy sell for a doc to be like, this is way less trauma on the baby, just to take it out, than to go through that. And I'm just trying to connect the dots as to why, because let's be real. I've seen personally childbirth.
Yeah.
Both C-section and vaginal.
Yeah.
And both of them are traumatic.
Yes.
So,
Or is that programmed? Is it traumatic? Because I work with a lot of women that do at-home births.
That's fair. And
it is not traumatic. It's the most beautiful experience they've ever had.
Thank you for that. That's true. It's a decision that was made kind of in a group think, and we all of a sudden decide that is. And
Gynecologists, the men.
The gynecologists.
The gynecologists. That's
so
where it goes back.
there's now women gynecologists.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Was it like a cultural, social thing why there wasn't women doctors then?
You know, I don't.
There's from the time of humanity.
Can of worms that we're about to open.
Hey, it's interesting.
Yeah,
this is entertaining.
Yeah, it's the patriarchy.
Oh, we're doing that now?
We'll do that.
Okay.
But I may not be on the side that you think I am, because there aren't no sides.
Well, no, I'm more just like how, when you look, because this isn't just a history of medicine. This is a history of humanity.
It is.
From the time that there was the first baby born, there was somebody having to catch it.
Yes.
So
yeah, it takes two.
Yeah. So why that was something that was more on the man makes sense when it comes to like, well, she's kind of busy. Mm-hmm. And
so let me support.
And I don't know how the tribe worked when it came to, yo, Tracy, come over and help with this while, Bob is here playing catcher. I don't know.
Women used to sit in a position and catch the baby and bring them right into their chest.
Yeah.
So they had instant physical connection with the mother, which is what they're familiar with. And we can talk about that. There's studies that show that kids that were adopted and didn't have physical connection with their moms, 10 times more likely to be addicts, have mental health disorders, metabolic disorders, because they didn't have physical touch. And there's one reason for that. It's called nervous system regulation. The mom regulates the baby. skin to skin touch. So think about that.
Bro, there's so many like existential, I'm calling you bro. There's so
That's
many
fine.
existential questions here. Because then it's like, well, then if it's, because that in my mind makes me think that, adoption isn't as good of an option as we're being told that it could be.
I've done an adoption.
And does that mean that like, this is of course a facetious question, but like that kid should just not be here at all?
It's a really good question.
I don't know if there's an answer to it because it's
There's not an
individual.
answer to that one.
But
I
it's
can't
an interesting.
even.
Because I'm pro-life.
Yeah.
With an asterisk.
Yeah.
There's clearly I think that abortion has been overused as birth control for a majority of the things in this whole like rhetoric about like women's rights and everything. It's more about a convenience of not having to have a child if you don't want to, as opposed to the actual, mental and physical stuff with the mom and, rape and other really extreme traumatic situations.
Yep.
But I hadn't even considered the idea that like not having access immediately to the mother for the child could be
Detrimental.
a big problem for development.
Big problem.
Wow.
Like we're talking about suicide, crime, mental health, psychiatric problems.
So is that so should I ask my drug dealer if he's adopted, and if he is, I know he's a good one?
Yeah. Like legitimately. And I'll tell you this right now. I wouldn't say that we shouldn't have this, the kids that are going to be adopted probably.
Yeah, we got to
should
make
be
sure
here.
we're clear about that.
But let's just say that, what if that pain ends up becoming their power in life, right? Like most people I work with, they've been through some compounded traumatic experiences.
Right.
But they're the most badass, like
Okay,
heart-centered leaders I've ever.
Thank you
ever
for bringing
worked
that
with.
up, because I want to make sure that we're clear on that. Like adoption doesn't make you broken. Adoption doesn't make like it's. I know.
I was adopted.
I know people that. Okay, there we go. And you've clearly done well for yourself.
Well,
and
but I was
figured out-
adopted at 17.
It's a little different than right out of the womb. So.
Yeah.
But what I guess my point is, I want to make sure that that's a very clear thing that's communicated in our conversation here. Is that like I'm not in any way judging adoption as bad. I'm more thinking through this as I gather these interesting pieces of information that you're providing relative to C-section and adoption and immediate nervous connection with the mother and how all that works.
Yep.
Speaking of that, dudes have taken credit for a lot of stuff when it comes to females that they shouldn't have been doing that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I have this bit.
Like, oh, we had a baby. No, I had the baby.
Dude, I have this bit in my act, and you haven't seen my act, so I'll show you this. Did you?
Okay.
So you've clearly heard of the G-spot.
Oh, I know.
Ernst Grafenberg was the guy that's a dude. Who named G-spot.
But maybe he discovered it. So maybe he played a role, right?
Yeah, but the arrogance of this prick, you know what I mean? Like now you're gonna put your name on it. It's not even your name. It's like G. I actually had a funny thought. It's like, so if his sons can't find it, who do they ask? Dad or the girl?
Hey, Dad, come help me find this G-spot because I don't know where it is.
Dude, you said
clearly
Scott,
most men don't know where it is. Like,
Yeah.
let's just say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Kegel as well. That's
Another dude.
It's Anthony
Another
Kegel.
dude.
Dr. Anthony Kegel out of
Yes.
Wisconsin in the late 1800s. And again, in my act, I've said this too, like I feel bad for his grandchildren because you will never hear Kegel Party of Four at Olive Garden. They don't use their name.
Oh, shit. Oh, I would.
Dude,
Have you seen
if
the
I
woman?
was a server at Olive Garden and somebody came up that had the name Kegel that I had to
Yeah.
sit,
Oh,
I'd be like,
I
dude,
would love to witness
I
that.
hope your party's not very big because this is going to be a tight squeeze in here, fellas. Ladies,
Or
sorry.
is this your flex? Is this how you're flexing on people?
Yeah. Me?
Yeah. No, them.
That like,
Flexing.
well, the name Kegel doesn't give you any hints unless you know what it is. It's not like there's
Yeah.
anything that
Well, and you don't even know what it feels like.
a Kegel.
Yeah.
Well, men have Kegels.
Do they?
Yeah, there's like a nerve that you got to like. It helps elongate.
Oh, yeah.
It actually creates endurance for the
Intimacy.
for
Yeah.
intimacy. Yeah.
That's a good word.
And men have a pelvic floor as well.
They do.
Yeah. So
Did you know that the female anatomy is identical to the male anatomy? Like what the pussy actually looks like is identical to the penis.
I've seen both. It's not.
I will send you a picture. I'll prove it to you.
Just because you label
It's just
a vagina
external
on the bottom of, dude, are you?
versus internal.
It's 2023. I know what you're trying to push on me here.
Yeah. Yeah. They're literally identical. They are a match made in heaven.
Okay, identical as in yin and yang, or like, because they're not the same.
They are the same. The only difference, I will say, the biggest difference,
Is
obviously,
the appearance.
is what it looks like.
Then they're not the same.
They are. Same anatomy.
So men don't have fallopian tubes? Men don't
I'm
have...
not talking about that part.
Well, then what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the walls.
Oh, the pelvic floor.
Yes.
Okay, well, we got to be clear because you're bringing in pictures of like pussies and dicks and shit, and I'm like, no, they don't look the same. I don't know.
Don't look the same.
Hey, sky isn't green
and guess
here,
what?
okay?
Women have way more nerve endings than men do.
Oh, of course they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because let's blame that one on the patriarchy too. How'd they get that?
Yeah, they literally did.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you get her off once and then you go and then you're done. No, you get her off 10 times because she can do that.
Yeah.
And then you go.
Yeah. Well,
that's what we're equipped for.
I'm aware.
Yeah. I didn't know.
It doesn't sound fair though.
Oh, it's fair.
No, it is fair because, well, I've also heard that like men's experiences are not even remotely as intense as a woman's.
Nope.
And then these ladies get mad at us for being able to like have multiple,
Yeah. Well, the reason why they're mad is because they haven't been able to receive it. Because they have blocks.
That's not always the dude's fault.
No, it's not the dude's fault. There's full accountability on both sides. It's not like men against women.
There's good people on both sides.
Yeah, there are. There are great people on both sides.
Good old Donald Trump we got to bring in Trumpy into the business.
Yeah, let's do it. Why not?
Anyway, well, that's very curious to me. All of the things we're discussing as far as, I don't know if it's the patriarchy for the sake of the patriarchy. It just happened to be because of the way tribes were set up that the man was there for his own, partner's birth.
Yeah. Yep.
And then there was the know-it-alls like, I think I know a little bit more about this than she does. I can see it. She can't.
Like Kegel and G-Spot and
Dr. Kegel and Dr. Grafenberg, two legendary pioneers. Gosh. Isn't that crazy?
It makes you wonder if they really even please their women.
Yeah, to be
I'm
that
really
clinical.
Curious.
Well,
honey, let's get you up on the table. I'm going to show you your anatomy. Like, is it that scene?
You know who Tim Ferriss is, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay. Have you read his book, The 4-Hour Body?
No, but it sounds interesting.
Okay. This is, I didn't expect us to be this graphic and talking this much sex stuff on this, but this was interesting. In that book, he has this thing. This book got banned from Costco.
Oh.
They didn't know what was.
Surprised.
They didn't know because he's a prolific author. He has some amazing books. 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour Body. He's got.
I have read 4-Hour Work Week, and it's amazing.
It's amazing. Tools of Titans, Tribe of Mentors. Like he's got these great resources for entrepreneurs when it comes to figuring your stuff out. But in his book, The 4-Hour Body, he has this thing where he says he talks about this. He describes this pattern of touch for a man digitally on a woman that is not. It's sexual in nature as far as the parts you're touching and the arousal, but it's very clinical. He's like just lightly grazed, the left upper thing, like it's like imagine you're
upper
just like touching a piece of paper and the whole thing. He's like, just do that for 15 minutes and he's like just he kind of sells you on this idea of getting your partner to be like, just let me try something on you. It's gonna be whatever, and then she just gets to lay there and
receive.
He's playing a set like he's Kygo or some
Step
shit.
one,
He's,
step two.
What's up? Calvin Harris is spinning anyway. And it
works.
It multiple pulses and just from the lightest touch.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Why not?
How many? I can't tell you how many. This is personal, but so many men that just get crazy, and I'm like, dude, that is way too hard, way too much.
Then open your mouth.
I did.
Good.
Oh,
no, I don't mean right now. I mean like when in the moment. Like, bro, hey, sweetie.
Like, this is not going well. This is all wrong.
We got to be tender about it. You can't just be like, bro.
Well, it's a sensitive thing. We have way more nerve endings, so it's different for the male. The male you can be a little more rough with.
I gotta call out my bros on that because a lot of these guys are daft when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
They get their sex education from pornography, and it's like, dude, there's nothing,
they're desensitized.
There's nothing. Well, in several ways, like even thinking what they're seeing in those moving images is what a woman would actually want.
It's not even. Can I just?
You can say
something
whatever.
Really fucking funny.
Okay.
So I had an experience with a dude, and he. Probably can't hear this. Well, whatever. Fuck it. People are gonna judge. He was doing stuff to my armpits, and I was like, "There's nothing in that area that feels good."
Armpits,
and that's literally where I detox from.
Yeah, you sweat.
I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. I literally was like, "What are you doing right now?"
Is that like a thing, dude?
It's a fetish.
Where are dudes getting this thing with armpits?
Porn, foot fetish, Armpit
You could go to like
fetish.
Pornhub and be like armpit and you'll find it?
Yes.
Dude, I'm so childish in
I
this
can't handle
world.
it because it doesn't feel good.
You think?
Like at all. In fact, it's
Is
very
it ticklish?
It's gross. No, it's not even ticklish. It,
Dude.
for one, if I'm laughing, like that's a problem.
Well, you can have fun and laughter
yeah, there's a
during
difference
intimate times,
though of
but
like, oh, you're tickling me. What am I, like a 5-year-old little girl? I don't need to be tickled. You have some problems in your head, is what I think.
This is fantastic. Dude, what are you doing? Oh,
I'll tag him. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, there's a lot of indoctrination, and that's what I like to talk about. It's all programmed. It's all told. Like, for one, there's so much shame around sex. There's so much shame around intimacy, especially for men. Like, I'll vouch on the man side of this because I've been in a situation where I've experienced it. And it's like, all men want to do is to give. Like, they just want to give.
yes.
And there are so many women who cannot receive. Like, I'll meet a woman, I'm like, she is uptight in her vagina. Like, I can feel it. I'm like,
Sorry,
if you
I know
just
it's not to be funny, but the way you said that was hilarious. Yeah, I can
if
see
you
it.
just let go, you will receive so much more physically, like on an intimate level, but in your entire life. And so men are over here like, hey, I want to give to you. I want to serve you. I want to please you. I want to treat you this way. But there's so many women who have been, hurt and traumatized, especially sexual abuse. That's one of the biggest blocks for women.
Yeah.
That they can't even allow it to happen. They cannot
It's sad.
just take that breath and like pause, And it's really ripping off both people. Men are being ripped off. Women are being ripped off.
I like how you describe it that way because you're ripped off. It's a bad investment.
Yeah, because you can create with that energy. Sexual energy is the most powerful, potent energy on the planet. We literally were put here to create.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to just be life. It's like what you've created with your podcast and your children and your marriage and what you've created with your impact. That's all creation. That's all sexual energy is creation energy.
Yes, I know this to be true. And I also know that one thing that I've learned is that the energy of sex and the energy of ambition run very narrow to each other. And so that's why you have, like specifically with men, when you have successful, ambitious men, they're always very horny.
Yes, and they're very pleased. There's a direct connection.
They're very pleased to find that.
Like they have a good relationship with their partners. The better the relationship with their spouse is, the more successful they are.
I wouldn't well, successful in a broader sense, yes, but I was more referring to like that's why you see I think there's some blockages there, but that's why you see high-level, successful, rich men have issues with hookers and strip clubs.
Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah,
The energy of their ambition and their sexual desires, it runs so parallel to each other and intertwines that oftentimes the receptacle or the container of their monogamous relationship is insufficient. And so this energy has to go somewhere, and they're already making money being successful. And so it ends up happening that these, they delve into these other areas that are quite traumatic and not traumatic in the sake of trauma, but it creates trauma in their life because there's rules that they're breaking relative to how they handle their partner and how their partner handles them.
Yeah. So it sounds like some dopamine hacking that's going on.
Yeah. That's a great way to describe it. It's a very, I agree that that's a, sex and creation and all that, it runs, it's the bedrock of most everything in our life. Like
it's primal.
Yeah. I'm always curious when I see, I think it's a problem in our youth right now.
Yes.
Because, like, for example, I was having a conversation with my daughter. I have a daughter who's 13. And she was talking about these people that she's known at school. Like one of them was asexual, had been self-proclaimed asexual, and was using these odd pronouns like Yusef pronoun. I couldn't even remember. It was so foreign to me. I didn't know how to give it validation. And she didn't need validation from in that part of the conversation. But she's like, well, so these people say they're not sexual. And I go, so they describe it as asexual? And she says, yeah. And I go, that's not what asexual means. Asexual means you can produce on your own.
Yeah.
Like there's organisms in this planet that like they don't need another partner.
Like fish.
They can do it inside themselves. And my daughter's like looking at me going, wait, what?
Oh, she didn't even know, huh?
No, because she's being told that asexual just means you're not attracted to things.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, and I even said to her, I asked her some questions about her person.
Yeah.
And I'll leave those out of this part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And everything that I had predicted was true about this person was not connected to their body, not connected to their own spirit as far as like understanding what they like and what they don't like. Like depressed, traumatic, bad relationship with mom, bad relationship with food, all these.
So bad relationship with self.
With self, of course.
Yeah. And it will just reflect.
So asexual is a bad relationship. Just kidding. But it was curious to me because like I think that that's something that it's also it's a two-sided thing for me because yes, sex is a part of everything that makes up life.
Yep.
It's the main driving factor in relationship if you think about it. Like if you don't have a sexual relationship in your committed partner, that's a problem. If you don't have a good sexual relationship, it's a problem.
Yep.
And so
with yourself, you mean?
Both, yes,
Yeah,
self
both.
and your. Well, it has to start with yourself, but
Yeah, it
and your
has
partner
to
as
every
well.
time.
But yet we're seeing kind of this sort of liberation of it, which I think is good.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't think we need to be that liberated with it. I think there's still a sacredness associated
There
with the
is.
body and the sharing of
There
energy
is.
and things like that that is getting overlooked. And it's
Yeah.
like we've gone from this really kind of conservative narrative of like, you know, only have sex when you're married and all these other things are bad, which I don't believe at all, over to this like, hey, it's a free for all. We can fuck whoever we want. Open marriages everywhere. But that causes more
It's
problems.
such a shit show.
It is.
It is. I've had a recent experience. I started dating.
Okay.
And I met a guy and he was like, didn't even tell me that he was polyamory. I ended up meeting someone that was with him. She came to one of my
Really?
circles. Didn't even tell
He
me.
didn't think that was something you
didn't
needed
have
to
the
know,
nerve
or was
to
it a fear
express.
thing he didn't share with you? Like, what was his motivation for not telling you? He liked you and was like, this is gonna make her run.
Because of like how I operate with the mind and body. Like
Right.
I know why. So I think the majority of it is, you know, men have struggled to be vulnerable. And I wouldn't say it's their fault. Like I'm not saying, oh, men are choosing to not be vulnerable. I think it's very
It's not
conditioned.
safe for men to be vulnerable.
It's not. And you know, most women can't hold the space for it, if I'm being honest. It's not that men can't be vulnerable even. It's that they don't even have the space to be vulnerable because as soon as a man's vulnerable, it's taken personally. Or it's, you know.
Yeah, you share your feelings and all of a sudden like it pisses off the partner.
Yep.
And now you're having to try to make peace and apologize for your Dude, I've seen that in my own life. I've seen that in the lives of other men. It's such a
I've done
horrible, detrimental
I
thing
have
to
been that
the
woman.
relationship.
Yeah. I've
If a
been that
dude
woman.
can't like be in a place where what he feels is okay,
Yeah.
and it's not taken personal by the partner,
It's not going to
you got some
happen.
deep work to do.
Yep. And I've been that woman, so that's why I speak on it because I've been there. It's something that I've worked on greatly. So
Good for you. Wow.
So yeah, I feel like why that happened is because there's this dopamine, you know. It's very common. There's a theme of weak men right now, right? And the theme is overstimulated, desensitized, lack of motivation, you know, victimhood, just anything that I can do to bury and numb out from what I'm really experiencing, right? Because of that lack of vulnerability. And so I see that, like I witness it, I experience it, and I think that was going on. Like in my opinion, that's
In
exactly
the
what was-
polyamorous thing, that was
just with this person specifically. But I also think that it's very correlative in the polyamory community that there's a wound that's being expressed because there's a doctor, Gabor Mate.
is it a dude?
It's a dude, and he is profound with trauma healing. Like if you want to learn about trauma healing, he is the guy. Like he's been able to prove insane things. He's done really amazing psilocybin journeys to help people heal one-on-one. He's done incredible work. And he would tell you that every decision you make is coming from trauma until it's healed. And most people that go into polyamory, because I've you know, Aubrey Marcus is a good example of that.
Yeah.
His whole journey was so intense. I followed the whole journey, read his books with going into polyamory, and guess what? He met his wife, and they've had multiple marriages now. But when he was in that community, he was dead set on being in that community. Like he felt like he needed to be there. But when he did his journeys, he realized why. It was stuff that he had suppressed that even led him to making those decisions in the first place.
Like what? I'm not familiar with his. I followed when he was with Wit and they had
Yeah.
their open thing. I followed that along and I was curious.
Yeah.
He had said something to me that always stuck, and he said, "If you ever want to learn deeply what your insecurities are, be in an open relationship." And I'm like, "No, thanks, man."
It is.
And then to have him get out of it and like his relationship now from the outside, of course, I'm not there. I'm not
Yeah.
his friend.
Yeah.
It seems way more connective and loving and healthy. And
Yeah.
she's expressive of her femininity. He's expressive of his masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems different. But so what was it that was keeping him there for your understanding? Like, why would you stay in that if it wasn't serving?
But what if it was serving?
Serving what, though, is my question. So if
The
it wasn't or
alignment
wasn't,
of his life.
so how, though? Like, what was he getting out of it as far as your perspective?
Maybe exactly what he said. Like, hey, if I go into an open relationship, I'm going to be forced to be seen what my wounds are because it challenges you. It challenges the way you see things in relationships. It challenges your beliefs in relationships. Like the whole, being monogamous indoctrination in religion, outside of religion. There's a lot of indoctrination about relationships in general.
Right.
But I think people learn when they're in that scenario that everything is choice. And just like you said with words earlier, it's all made up. There's very few facts on the planet. And it's not a fact that it has to be this way or that way. There are no facts about that. Science, though, biology would support that we are meant to connect that way and to be
With
together.
monogamy or with polyamory?
Just monogamy.
So science, if according to your study and work, supports monogamy.
It does.
Well, good.
Yeah, it definitely does.
There's people in my sphere. I mean, not super close, but like I know people that have been in thruples and that are open, and I got to tell you, like I feel this cognitive dissonance because they're amazing people, they're loving, they're friendly, and I don't judge them at all. I don't understand their world though.
Yeah.
It's like they go, oh, we got a new third now. And I'm like, how do you do that?
Can we bring this back to the microbiome? I think this is perfect.
Perfect.
Let's
Yes.
talk about the microbiome.
Okay.
So the woman carries a microbiome in her vagina. Okay. And that microbiome picks her mate. You have a microbiome in your mouth and your skin. It's its own brain, right? Their own brains. And the microbiome in your mouth picks the mate of the man. And let's go back to birth.
So hold on. So it picks it through attraction, through passion, through
It will,
all those
you
things?
kiss
Okay.
a man and your bacteria will communicate through the cells if it's a yes or no.
Yeah, it's
if it's a good
because
match.
men have dirty mouths. Hey. Anyway, please continue.
In fact, I think they just proved that the egg actually chooses the sex of the sperm that it attracts.
Interesting.
They just barely were able to discover that it will magnetize the male or the female. They used to think that men chose the sex.
Vibration thing.
It's a vibration. And that's women in general.
Yeah.
We attract, we magnetize, we do not chase, we do not, grab at things. We naturally attract because of this womb. So going back to birth, let's say you're a C-section child, okay? And you have a very disrupted microbiome, which disrupts your entire nervous system, all of your hormonal production, everything that makes all of your decisions, and it creates all of your behavior, which changes the actions that you take in life. And then you end up being 30 years old and you're in a marriage and all of a sudden you get triggered and you just want to go and sleep with everyone you want, right? If there's a disconnect in your body, that bacteria is not communicating if it's a yes or no. And this is just my opinion. And I support.
So you pick the wrong dudes.
Well,
women.
I
even,
support the whole polyamory thing. Like I support people in general. Do what you want to do. It's your life. Like I have lots of friends that are in it. I love all of them individually, right? It's just
So
not
you're
my thing.
polyamorous too?
I am not. And it's just not my thing. But I'm very connected, right?
Sure.
My brains communicate like a pro. My body signals at an optimal level, right? Like it's there. And the reason why is because I've done the work, because I've drained trauma from my nervous system, because I've done the mental stuff that needs to happen. I've worked on my heart. I've worked on my pussy. Like I've done the healing in that area and it needs to happen. But what if it was this disconnect that's driving your behaviors and decisions to go and be in those experiences, right?
Yeah.
Because it starts there. It starts in the nervous system. It doesn't start in your brain. You don't have a thought and then go do it. 7 seconds before I say anything, it's already done in my mind before I even say what I'm going to say. So it's already there. It's already within me. It's already to be experienced. And what I'm talking about is trauma. That's what leads people to every decision in life. And it's very healing. So I just want to validate.
So can you walk the viewer and listener through that? How does trauma dictate every decision that you make in your life?
Because when you're talking about, let's talk about, quantum physics. Let's talk about energy, right? There's an energy in every cell. We're in the age of mitochondria right now. 4 years ago, we were in the age of the microbiome, right? We were in the age of the microbial existence of our body. We're 98% bacteria. And our bacteria has its own consciousness. We have consciousness that flows through.
How do we know that?
There's studies.
Okay.
They've done studies on this. Emmer and Meyer is one of them.
How do they dictate that bacteria is conscious?
They do studies and they watch what there's one thing that your listeners can look up. It's called the double slit experiment.
Okay.
Okay. It's consciousness observing itself and changing a pattern on its own. So they've already proved that in quantum physics.
So they've observed behavior have conscious decision or conscious flow of behavior.
So they would shoot a light, right, to hit the wall and make a pattern. And when consciousness was conscious observant of itself doing that, it changed it.
So it wasn't reactive, it was proactive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So going back to this microbial thing and trauma, most people think of trauma and they're like, oh, I don't have trauma. Nothing bad happened in my life. If I call you a cunt, or if I say you're ugly, or if I'm like, you're never going to go anywhere in life, that's traumatizing because it creates an emotional experience in the body. So trauma is an emotional charge from an experience, and your neurochemistry will make a memory of it, and it will hold it in your nervous system, and then it will communicate in your body.
So how do you live without trauma every day then? Because we don't need a bubble wrap society. Like, well,
no, we don't.
This
is why we need to take care of ourselves. Like, this is why we need to regulate our nervous systems. This is why we need to do the brain work and the body work. That's probably why you go to the gym, right? Because it regulates you. It creates resiliency. And that goes to your muscles contracting, actually creates, different chemicals that are produced to make you happy. And that's why you go. Trauma is very similar, right? The difference here, like when we're talking about trauma, I just want to validate that everybody has had a traumatic experience in their life. Everybody. There's not one person that hasn't. It's just, what do you do with it and how do you view that, right? And then what's your indoctrination around it? What do people tell you about trauma? Why are you resistant to looking at trauma? That's something else to look at. Why is it even bad to talk about trauma? Like it's a negative thing.
Well, that's not an overwhelming consensus. It's certain people have resistance to it. Others are fine with talking about it.
Yeah.
Some people won't shut the fuck up about their trauma.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing too. That's the whole aspect of that pendulum that swings that you were talking about earlier. Like, gets so far over here, and that's exactly what's going on in society right now. We were so far with burying and numbing and all these things that now we're really far on the other side of getting stuck and trapped and becoming victims and powerless. And I'll tell you,
it's an epidemic.
It is. And it comes down to the nervous system. Everything that we do in life, every experience we have, everything that we're experiencing right now together is through the nervous system. Even this lens, your eyes, like what I see is an experience through my nervous system. So trauma, and I will reference Dr. Bruce Lipton. He is the king of epigenetics, and he'll go deep into this, and that's who I've learned from, is when you have a traumatic experience, it creates restriction of flow in your nervous system. And we're talking about life force energy, right? And talking about that, you meet people that have very compounded trauma and they're drained. They're dead inside. And it's a very physical thing. It's not a spiritual thing.
Of course.
It's physically, their nervous system is like restriction. So this is my theory. And this came to me, when I was doing my psilocybin journey. Huge downloads about this, right? Just a lot of messages I received about the nervous system. I see our nervous systems as I see lightning, right? They're not different at all. Actually, they're the same. We have a charge, right, that starts from the ground. I want to make that clear. It doesn't start in the third eye. It doesn't start in the crown for all the spiritual listeners. It's not up here. Your experience is down here on this planet, in this dimension, on the earth, in your feet. The grounding starts there and the energy moves up the nervous system and then comes back down. And when you have trauma, it creates that restriction in the nervous system and it shifts every signaling pathway in your body. Think about that. It will restrict every signaling pathway through the endocrine system,
So where does it
all
go
of your
if it's
organs.
restricted?
It comes up and goes right back out. You know, you hear people that are like, oh, I'm out of my body. All of my clients, most of my clients, I'll say almost all, they're in their heads, right? Why are they in their heads? Because they're not grounded. The energy cannot move through so that they can be present.
So let's then talk about your work then. I think this is a good segue into hypnotherapy as a modality for releasing these things.
Yes.
So let's start at the beginning and just, if you could please describe exactly what hypnotherapy is.
Yes. Hypnotherapy is subconscious reprogramming. So we're reprogramming your subconscious mind, which is a part of your brain that takes in all of your experiences from the womb up until this point.
So is it legitimately a part of your brain or is it a part of your consciousness?
It's a part of your brain. It's brain science.
So the subconscious is a physical location.
Yes, in the brain. Yep. And then there's the conscious, which is also a physical location.
Okay.
Reptilian is also a physical location in your mind.
Croc brain.
The amygdala. Yes. You have an emotional center as well. So I'll tell everybody I'm a very spiritual being, like very spiritual. And my spiritual experience is not separate from my physical experience. They are one and the same. And everything is mental. That's Hermetic philosophy, ancient esoteric wisdom, all past civilizations will validate that to say everything is mental, right? It's all brain. But there's also the mind, and that's another conversation. And you're talking about consciousness, right? But as a hypnotherapist, I focus on the brain and the physical body, which creates spiritual enlightenment, in my opinion, right? So with hypnotherapy, it's pretty simple. Let's say you had a C-section, right? You were a C-section child. I could take you right back to that moment in the womb where that experience happened, and you would remember it.
Do you use elements of neuro-linguistic programming?
I do.
Okay.
I do sleight of mouth as well.
Sleight of mouth. I'm not familiar with this.
Brain magic.
Right.
So sleight of hand, right?
Right.
Magicians.
Hey, look over there.
Yeah. I do sleight of mouth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Please
that's,
continue.
that's one of my, I have to give a shout out to my mentor. His name's Jim Fortin. And
Do you know William Lamb?
That sounds familiar.
He owns and runs Upgrade, which is
Upgrade Labs, right?
I don't know if it's called Labs, but
just Upgrade.
It's a mental programming coaching platform.
Yeah.
And he's incredible. I've invested a lot of time and resource in William, and he's really helped me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And their entire modality. But what you're saying seems like the same nougaty center, just a different looking candy bar.
Yes, exactly. I'm like really hungry right now too, so I just really hit the spot. What's cool is I can imagine eating that and my body will respond.
Right. Okay, so then how do you then induce the reprogramming, as I heard you say, of the subconscious? How do you induce that reprogramming?
So when I work with my clients, I like to do a lot of it one-on-one before I even put them into a trance or hypnotize them. Because a lot of everything you say, everything with programming is all language, right? And that's NLP. So NLP, sleight of mouth, they're all the same thing. The language we speak is reflective on the way that we think, and through our indoctrination through school and, religion and politics, we're all taught what to think versus how to think. So what I do with my clients right from the beginning is I know right away the ways that they're thinking. It's either black or white, this or that. There's very extreme thinkers. That's a very common one. Or it's like from here to I'm going to jump over this mountain. That's also a way of thinking, which a lot of entrepreneurs, that's why they're blocked in their business, is because they have a way of thinking that doesn't support reality. So I shift their ways of thinking. I shift the perspective they have on the world, which is the lens they look through sleight of mouth, through NLP, through how I talk to them.
Okay.
It's just like this. We'll sit down. It just happens energetically. People are very open with me. There's nothing someone couldn't tell me that I've either not physically experienced myself or that I couldn't hold that space. And when I mean hold that space, be in my heart and hear them and see them and, and comfort them. And that's really what I do. So I start with that before I even go into the reprogramming, because here's the thing. I want to know what's driving all of your behaviors and decisions. I want to get to the core wound that led you to this moment in my office, right? And if you want to know what it is, there's 3 core wounds that every client has. Every client. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And I'm not lovable.
Aren't those the same, though?
No. You would think that. But think about this. Worth and being enough, they're not even the same. They sound like they are.
So it's the difference of capacity at that point?
Yeah, and it's the difference of how their parents treated them. Right? Okay. So let's say your parent, you were crying to your parent, and they were like, I don't have the time right now. I'm not lovable. It's because I'm not lovable. There's something wrong with me.
Well, how couldn't it be that I'm not worth it either?
No. Nope, they're different. They're different experiences. I've been able to really track this with my clients.
Well, no, I'm very curious.
I was on the same page with you.
And I hope that I'm truly curious when I ask these questions, because I'm playing along in my mind as far as listening to what you're saying and really trying to understand it. And in my own experience of my own growth in life, those 3 things seem to be the same. That if I was to fix one, it would fix them all.
Yes, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
And you're right.
That's true? You fix one, you fix them all?
When you fix one, you fix them all.
Interesting. So they're not the same.
They're not the same.
But they're tied together.
Because the imagery and the emotion are not the same.
Okay.
Right? When that experience happened. They're not. They're different experiences. Right? One could be with your mom, one could be with your dad, and one's with your brother. So you're going to feel differently about all 3.
Okay.
Because you have a different relationship with all 3. Your mom is very nurturing. She cuddles you. She's soft. She tickles your back. Your dad is like, go to fucking bed. I'm sick of your shit. You need to get better in sports. Like, he's going to create that, stern structure and stability.
Right.
Keep you safe financially. Very different experiences. But I believe if you get to that one core wound, because here's the thing. When I work with people, it's like, I'll tell you right now, 5 top tracks I do for all my clients: confidence, surrender, fear of success, perfectionism, and then I take them to their higher self. Every time, those 4 things.
Do people really have a fear of success, or do they have a fear of rejection?
I believe that it's a little deeper than both of those statements. I believe it's that core wound. I'm not enough.
Okay.
Right. And that goes to self-love and self-worth.
Right. So just for the sake of like continuity here, I want to make sure that so if we review earlier in our conversation, we can have 50 traumatic experiences a day.
Yep.
So, and you're referencing like a core wound, and it sounds singular. So reconcile those 2 things. Like, we're dealing with a shit show every day of like having trauma, but yet there's one time that was the big one we got to deal with. Like, please explain that.
So I believe there's a one time, but there's also compounded trauma. So compounded trauma is I've had multiple experiences that are stuck in my nervous system, right? Which is everybody. I really want to be like, oh yeah, we're all different, but we're all human. It's a human race.
Yes.
Right? The human race, humanity as a whole. So I believe we all have compounded trauma. Okay. But there's always, when I've worked with people, and even in my own trauma, there's always been this one that was more significant than other ones, right? And there's no order for it. And I want to say
Can't there be multiple like big deal traumas?
Yeah.
So then why are we like, how do we reconcile the language of it then? Because like a core wound is one, singular.
Yep.
Compounding is it started here, and then these ones were an effect of it. Do I understand that accurately?
Yes.
Okay, so then.
Or what if it started here and it kind of pushed a lot of these other ones to happen?
Right.
Because it started here.
That would make sense then, that if you do fix a singular wound, then it's going to leave a void for some of these other ones to kind of to get empowered.
Yep.
I noticed, I'll share this experience with you. So working with Upgrade and some of their facilitators, we did this thing called timeline therapy.
I do timeline therapy.
And I went back, and it sounds crazy, but it was very real. I went back to being like 2 weeks from being born. I was in my mother's womb. And I overheard a conversation between her and my father where she was saying she wishes she wouldn't have got pregnant. They were having marriage issues. And I know from not just my own hypno sort of experience of that as my reality, I know from speaking with my mother, and she has no idea about this experience that I had, that there was definite marital issues that they were having around the time of my birth, and they weren't communicating. My mom was this, and my dad was that, and everything. And so when I had this, I don't know where I pulled the data from, or if it was just some sort of manifestation. I made my own movie that wasn't really real, but it was emotionally real, and so it gave me some sort of feedback for that. But I remember hearing her say those things, and so I was internalizing these things in the womb, that like I wasn't coming out as a wanted baby. I was somebody that like was going to be a hindrance and a burden. And then throughout my life, the experiences of dealing with my mother and some of the challenges that she's had, and my dad and some of his issues, that I have confirmation bias that, that a child is to be seen, not heard. I was a child that was very well behaved up until, my entire childhood.
Were you always really funny and into comedy?
Yeah. I was always the funny kid. I was talented. I was like the show pony for them. And it was, I remember this one time where I was singing in church. I was like 5 years old, and I was asked to sing as a part of this primary thing, this solo for a 5-year-old. That's a huge, now knowing.
I'm getting stressed out for you. Like,
after
the
fact, I'm like, that's a big deal. Back then I was just like, well, I sound good when I sing. I like to sing.
Yeah.
And I remember that like I had this one like kind of missed note in the thing. And as a 5-year-old, I was dwelling on it so much.
Was it voice crack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was,
wait, can I just pause you for one second? It's not to interrupt you and be rude, but I'm connecting the dot for you. And maybe you've already connected it. But have you considered that one experience led you to having a podcast and speaking for a profession?
No. I guess it could have.
Just a thought.
I mean, I'm seeing it in my head, this little piece of shit church in Douglas, Wyoming.
Well, think about that. When you think about that experience, it was specific to
my voice,
you speaking in your voice, and now you're being heard everywhere.
But but I recognize, though, since we're getting into the deep end of the pool here, I do recognize that I still carry with me a lot of times a feeling of irrelevance.
Yeah.
That just because I have a platform and a podcast and I do comedy and those things, like I've carried with me for years the idea that I should be more viral and famous than I am because of the work that I've done. I'm dynamic, I'm funny, I'm articulate, I'm an easy guy to look at. Why am I not at these other levels when other idiots around me don't have those same things and they're way more involved and way more seen?
Have you considered that it's because you don't want to be a burden?
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know how to connect those two things, though.
We just connected it.
But we didn't, though, because I don't feel the connection there. Like, me being in that place doesn't make me a burden.
Yeah, but the womb did.
The wound did?
The womb, when you were in your womb, when you heard that conversation.
So, but I'm not intellectually connecting that, though, because the experience in the timeline therapy of being in the womb and overhearing this conversation. But I supposedly released that in therapy, and I don't know if I actually did or not, but like it was...
You should have, if you did timeline. I mean, do you feel it anywhere when we're talking about it? Like, is there anything moving in your body?
Kind of. It's like there's still like this tension.
Yeah, where is it?
Talk about it. Just like kind of right here.
Yeah, I can feel that.
And I don't know...
Well, and as soon as I said it, notice how you moved your body. You closed your arms and crossed them. That's resistance. That's nervous system response. So it's telling me there's something there. Whether you tell me or your body, it's going to be told because that's how it works.
Meaning I'm resisting the idea that I'm not a burden? Like, so I have a belief that I'm a burden?
From that experience in the womb, you will 1,000% have a belief system that you are a burden, and you'll have a whole neural network around it. And this is why we get into neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
To create a new neural network.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
See, now it's moving because you just had a realization.
Yeah, well, I'm curious of all this. It's like there's so much that, because I've done a lot of work in the mental space already with what I've done with Upgrade, and I've been in self-development for, 2 decades.
Your whole life?
Yeah.
Like most of your life.
And I've made it a point to learn how to communicate, and I've made it a point to learn how to public speak, and I'm a headlining comedian, so like that has taken a skill set of speaking and said, that's not really the one. And I've had to revamp it. So there's like different ways of communicating. And anybody that watches this podcast has seen me shift in and out of those energies and can see it in real time. And so I'm just kind of trying to connect those dots as far as like, so as I hear you, and this wasn't supposed to be a therapy session for me, obviously, but so if the way to that relevancy and seenness and fame and the other things that I feel would be I feel like I've got a good grasp on a lot of things in life that other people, if they were to really understand it the way that I know how to help them with, would be made better. I don't think I'm a burden on society.
I don't think you are either.
But at the same time, like, I want more access to more listeners, more people.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, so how do I then, because even talking about that, I still feel that tension kind of come back.
Yeah, so let's go into it if you want to.
Sure, let's do it.
So what is the block? What is stopping you? And when we're doing this work, you know that I need the right answer.
Right.
The true answer, not what you want to tell me. So let's just get that out of the way.
Okay.
So what is the block? What do you think is stopping you from reaching more people? First thing.
I don't know. I just feel tension when I contemplate that.
Okay, so there's tension there.
Yeah, and it's like in this kind of area.
Yeah, in your heart.
Well, even above my heart, like kind of in this area too, like which is my throat.
Yeah, I feel it. I mean, look at your license plate. It's been talking to you this whole time.
That's funny.
Your body's been talking to you this whole entire time.
Huh. But just because I feel that doesn't mean I have an understanding of what it means.
No, and you don't have to. If you want to know the truth, you don't even need to know what it is. Our bodies are so intelligent that I'm like, hey, I can feel that sitting from right here.
Yeah.
I can move that out of your body from right here.
Okay, so move it.
I am. I'm working on it already.
Okay,
that's why we're having this conversation.
Slide them out.
I mean, that could be a really dirty joke.
Yeah. Doesn't make it a good one. So
here's the thing, though. You're holding on with that right hand.
Okay.
And that's your dad's side.
So it's my dad that I have issues with?
Well, maybe you had an experience with your dad. And now that you're biting your lips, it tells me that I'm pretty accurate.
I have a lot of issue with my dad.
Yeah.
Especially right now in my life with my parents.
Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what's going on right there. What do you think about that?
I don't think about it. I'm trying to connect it because it.
Well, what if you don't need to connect anything? What if you just need to feel it?
I hear you. Where I have a hard time with letting that be okay is that a big part of my development over time has been having moments of healing, of release, and then a feelingness that returns that allows it to be like good and open. And then something will slip later back on, and I don't have a point of reference to go back into the healing.
Yeah.
And it feels like an entirely new thing that I have to overcome. And I would choose different now. So if I'm going to really be able to let go of things related to my dad and my mom and all of that, I want to know what it was so that I can then be like, oh, that's intellectually, I can get back into that consciousness of everything.
Yeah, yeah. Because
So-
you don't want to go back into it.
No,
Like, you
no,
don't want it to
I
keep
want to know why.
repeating.
Like,
Yeah.
to me, I that's been one of the challenges I've had in self-development is like, I don't want to just, I want to know why. I'm a truth seeker. Like, tell me
Yeah,
the realness of it.
Okay, let's find out why then.
Okay, let's find out
What's
why.
the problem with your dad?
I'm extremely disappointed in him.
Okay.
My mother, I don't know, out of fairness to them, since they're not here to defend themselves, I'll just say that they're recently going through divorce, and that's public. People know this. And I'm really unimpressed with how they're comporting themselves.
Yeah.
And the dynamic between me and my parents is backwards. They look to me for support. They look to me for the answer. They look to me to mediate, and I'm fucking over it.
Yeah.
Like,
So you're parenting your parents at this point.
and it's been that way for decades.
Yeah.
So, my dad knows this. I've told him my dad has had a challenge his entire life, like with stability financially. And when it came
Big
to
driving force for you.
yeah, I don't want to fucking deal with that. But I've still been unstable financially. The irony, it's just at a different level.
And that's programming.
Okay, that's fair. I understand that. I've worked through some of that with upgrading things. And there's also been a part of me, and I've been attached to this story where I want, I grew up Mormon, and there was this sort of archetype in the Mormon culture where there was the strong family figure, the dad, and the wonderful mom that was the sweet one. And then they had the kids, and all the kids got good grades, and they went to do the thing. And then, the dad was in some leadership position, and they had money, and it was great.
Yeah, the
And
perfect
everybody
picture.
looked up at the family, and they're like, oh, look at that family. They're so great. And my girlfriend, my first girlfriend out of high school, was a part of that family. Very prominent LDS family. Everybody got good grades. They were rich. They were the whole thing. And I was this kid that came from this poor family where I was still an achiever and I still was ambitious and I wanted that, but I felt kind of like I wanted so much what they had that like I think I was attached more to that relationship with her because of the dynamic of the family than I was with me. And I wanted that in a dad. I wanted the dad that knew more than me. I wanted the dad that I could go to and be like, dude, I'm at my wit's end, man. Like, I don't know how to handle this. And my dad could, in loving, knowledge, be like, I got you, son. And most of my life was opposite, where I was like, my parents were coming to me. And I was even talking to my wife about this. Like, I resent that so much. And I've wanted that to be gone. And now watching them, my parents, fall apart in their relationship and having there be aspects of that to where it's just dissipating. I haven't talked to my brother in 10 years. And I have one brother, that's it. And so like, it's all of a sudden like my entire family outside of my own family is dissipating. It's kind of going away and it's heartbreaking because I never wanted that.
There's the word.
What's that?
It's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. And
yeah, I really encourage you to feel that.
I felt it a lot.
I know, but it's there right now. Like it wants to be seen. Let's just say that your inner child was heartbroken at a young age. Okay. And this is validating it.
Okay.
So when I do inner child work, just like timeline healing, it's like, hey, when you have that emotion right there and you don't let yourself feel it, you're not validating your younger self. You're telling him, right, this little boy that's hurt and heartbroken, I'm not going to see you. But that's what you felt when you were little. So the solution is seeing that little boy. So
please define that for me more like articulately, because I don't know what I'm supposed to be seeing with my little boy.
So if you were to close your eyes, right? And this is subconscious work because time does not exist in the subconscious mind. This is why I can do past life regressions, multiple lives in the past, and you will see all the imagery of it and all the emotions will be there.
Okay.
So we can do that with your inner child. Let's say you had an emotional experience where you were heartbroken as an inner child. You were little, you were probably 6 years old, 7 years old. There was a moment in time where you were super disappointed. And maybe it is when you were disappointed in yourself because you had that voice crack and you were embarrassed. And you've been hard on yourself ever since. Driving yourself to show up, to speak, to help, to change that. When you could literally travel back in your mind right now in this moment and tell him, you know what? You're good enough even if you messed up then.
Okay.
You're not heartbroken. I'm not disappointed in you. Right? And then let it go. It will just leave your body. And it's that simple.
How is it that simple?
It's already happening.
Okay.
Because the subconscious is recording. It's a recorder. It hears every single word that I say. It records every thought that you have. So can you just validate your younger self that made that mistake?
Yeah. Well, I feel I have.
Yeah.
It's like even thinking about that, it feels benign in my head. Like I don't have a lot of emotion attached to like that. It's more funny at this point. It's like if I could go back, I'd give him a little nuggie and be like, bro, you killed it. What are you doing?
But what about with
But
your
I've
dad?
carried that. It's interesting because I've carried that same sort of hyper standard to other performative arts, like with comedy. Mm-hmm. I'm really funny on stage, but I'm really hard on myself about it.
Yeah. That's the pattern that was created in that moment. So now you have a whole pattern in your mind of being hard on yourself. And it's served you. It's brought you to do amazing things in life. It's been your driving force. But it doesn't have to continue.
I don't like that as a driving force.
It doesn't.
Though.
That's what I'm getting at. Is it doesn't have to continue to be the driving force.
Okay, so how does that? How does an individual, myself included, of course, transition out of that to where I'm just out of love, doing what I want to?
Well, it's opening that heart back up that's hurting right now.
So how does that then like bleed into relationship?
Oh,
because like
let's talk about receiving. Right?
Okay.
Let's talk about receiving love. And just so you know, this brain sends more signals to this brain than any other part in the body.
Okay.
Right? So every action behavior you have, it's It's very driven from the heart. And just think, if your heart isn't open, and when I say open, there's restrictions with the nervous system connection, right?
Okay.
So it's not open to receive the signaling, so it can send the signaling to your brain. So the decisions you make will drive you away from someone versus connecting with someone. And we call it putting up walls, putting up the armor that we have, right? Covering ourselves, protecting ourselves. And the reason why most people, and maybe in your journey, you shut that heart off, you protect it.
Well, I don't know if I do. I feel that that's been a problem, is that I've been too open to loving. And that's
is there a such thing as being too open to loving?
Well, maybe I'm defining it wrong, but
yeah. What's a different perception of that you could share?
I guess
some different words that you could use. Let's just go into the situation that you're even getting to that would make you say that.
My wife and I, for example, we've had some challenges in our marriage over the last several years, and I was the driving force in the challenges, or at least that's how I've chosen to believe it. Even though I don't
hard on yourself. Keep going.
And and even as we've tried to reconcile things, our challenges have been that we're not hearing each other. And it's like we're on different frequencies. Like we'll have conversations and she'll say, like, I don't know how this is what your reality is. Like, how is this what you're, and then she'll list things that are very real that I guess I didn't value in the same way that she did. And then I'm feeling the same thing. Like, well, I did this and I did this and it's not received.
Yeah. I feel so much going on in your right side. It's just been loud.
With Dad.
Well,
see, the irony of that, though, is that like I feel a more emotional resentment towards my mother than my dad. So to have my dad's side be the one that's flaring up, that seems odd to me.
Well, think about your relationship with your wife. Can you connect some dots with your mom and her behavior?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm acting as my mom acted?
Well, you're going to act as your mom and dad. Whatever behavior you witnessed as a child, you will reenact until you become aware of it.
See, that's I see that as true too, because like one of the biggest, I've had breakthroughs recently about this.
Yeah, I saw that.
One of the biggest things of that is like allowing myself to lead myself,
which is your masculine, right? Like getting back into that masculine, which is why your right side is screaming, because it's like, hey, I really want it. Like your masculine really wants to come out, right? But did you have that growing up?
No, I was a creative, emotional, funny child.
Yeah.
I was never considered like a masculine kid. I mean, I wasn't effeminate, but I was a creative.
Yeah. So it's okay, right? Here's another pattern of possibly being hard on yourself. It's totally fine that that's how you've been your whole life. It's understanding that now that your perception is shifting, right, through this whole conversation and all the work you've been doing.
Well, where I was going with that, though, is that one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had is this concept that has been really hard for me to swallow. I don't like hurting people. And
hold on. Hard for me to swallow. Keep going.
Interesting. I don't like hurting people. And so because of whatever, I've been willing to shoulder the hurt myself in exchange for not.
Can we pause for a second?
Sure.
Because I'm catching something else.
Okay.
You saying something like, I don't want to hurt people, is the same thing as saying, I control how other people feel.
I get that. I understand the reality of that. So I guess in a more descriptive way is that I'm mindful of ways that people can choose into being hurt, and I would like to help avoid that.
So fear of confrontation.
Yeah. And so that's allowed me, so I haven't led myself in certain situations where it's like I needed to stand up. And the breakthrough that I had was from a great friend of mine. He said, you got to get over he's like, in order to get what you want, Bryce, it will hurt people.
It will. And people aren't going to like what you have to say, and they're going to judge the hell out of you.
And that has come, I think, as I'm connecting these dots, like I hear my mom say it a ton, like kids are seen, not heard. Like the idea that me speaking my mind was automatically something that wasn't acceptable.
And that's a big part of your programming right now in this moment, because you've said it multiple times to me. Kids are seen, not heard. Kids are seen, not heard.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that. Like,
no, but your brain remembers it.
I thought that about that's a part of my resistance, because like I don't parent that way. My kid's 13. She swears. I don't give a shit. Like I want her to. She's a very great artist.
So does mine. Kaylee, if you're listening, I know you're swearing.
My daughter's she's a great artist. She's a beautifully expressive young woman, and I love that about her. Like I'm so glad that that's how she is. So the idea that kids are seeing her isn't something that I feel is true.
Yes.
It's just I've heard it a bunch.
So let's talk subconscious really fast.
Okay.
You cannot outperform the subconscious belief systems.
Oh, I know that to be a fact.
And
Yeah.
and that's 95% of who you are.
Well, your identity is a key part of that. Like,
Yes.
I understand intellectually those things. Your identity governs your values govern your beliefs govern your behavior. You
Yeah.
want to change your behavior, you got to change how you see yourself.
Yep.
So,
And your thoughts, right? You're 65,000 a day. That's programming.
yeah,
What you're listening to, what you're watching, and what you're feeling. And that's the big disconnect for most people is they don't allow themselves to feel,
right.
right? Because of that closed off heart or the pain that's in the heart. We'll word it differently because you like that. The pain that's in there is very uncomfortable to feel. And not saying something.
Is that why then I'm so like susceptible to adoration?
Yeah.
That it just blows me away anytime somebody thinks I'm great?
Yeah. And you probably don't even receive it half the time. You're like,
It's hard to receive. I mean, I love it to death,
yeah.
but I also recognize like sometimes I don't. And this is shifting for me in the moment, and it's been shifting for a bit. I shared on my last episode of this podcast how I had this through using somatic breath work. I had this moment where this vision where I received adoration from the important people in my life. And then at the very end of it, I received it from myself. And it was like 100 times better and more gratifying than the reception that I got from other people.
Yep.
Not to say that makes it that I don't enjoy reception of love from other people.
Wait, but are you saying that you really need to receive it from yourself though?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but it's paired. It's like I don't live in a binary world. It's both.
Yeah.
I can love myself all that I want, and I do, and I'm being willing. My behavior has changed relative to how I even think about me and my contribution and who I am and what I provide this world for myself and for others. At the same time, I still love compliments. I love a good laugh when I'm on stage.
I love that
and
validation.
And I want it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different want now. It's like I don't need it at the same level as I used to, but if I was to never have it, that'd be a problem.
Yeah. So that's your love language. You not believe in love languages?
No, I absolutely do. I'm like, my joke is like, everybody's all of them. Like,
I am too.
It's
I
like,
tell people,
I love gifts, time, like all
call
of it.
me needy. I don't fucking care.
Yeah, fuck me, like all the things, But
Hey, I want it all, right? It's that indoctrination of like, here's going back to the ways of thinking. I can have this or that. I can't have both. That is not true.
Yeah.
You literally, physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually can have it all. In fact, you're here for it. You're here to experience all of it. The taste, the touch, the sound, the visual, the emotions.
Right. Well, in my life, I found, I've been quick to fall in love. And I think that that's probably a part of it. Is it just sort of
Same
adoration? Like love to me equals validation. Like if you're in love with me, I must be good enough to be loved by somebody.
I used to think that because I did not receive love growing up. I was a middle child. I wasn't seen, heard. I didn't even receive care. I didn't go to the dentist for the first time until I was like 14 years old. And I was in detention. And that's the only reason why I went.
Wow.
And it's almost like I prayed for it. Like, please lock me up so I can be taken care of. I need a roof. I want to know I'm going to be fed. Like I want to, be cared for.
Wow.
You're going to look for it regardless. So I would try and find it in relationships and be like, hey, if I sleep with you or because I was sexually abused as a child, probably 5 times I went back into my timeline healing on myself. 5 experiences before I was even 10 years old. And then was date raped at 15, sexually abused by an ex, like multiple compounded sexual abuse. So I was the person that was like, I'm going to give you everything. And I don't give a shit about me. I don't care if you give me anything because I just want to focus on you and I'm going to fuel you and I'm going to give you everything you need because then I'll be good enough. When I give it all, then I'll be worthy. And it didn't matter, right? Because my dad abandoned me when I was little. He abandoned his whole family. We all got split up, right? And it happened to my kids. My ex-husband emotionally abandoned us, financially abandoned us, in all areas abandoned us. Recent relationship, abandoned. Didn't matter what I did, no one was going to stay. That's what that one experience created for me. Didn't matter if I slept with you, if I gave you the world, if I took all of your pain, bared your children, it was never enough because I didn't think I was enough.
I identify with that a lot.
It was internal.
Yeah.
Right? So at some point, actually recently, I will vouch for hypnotherapy until the day I die. I've done deep reprogramming on myself. I've done my own work. I've embodied it. But I'll also give a lot of it to psilocybin. That plant forced me to sit with myself and to feel all of that pain, to experience it, to say, you know, my inner child, my own daughter was telling me what my inner child was telling me. She said, Mom, no matter what you do, you can't keep someone. She told me that word for word. You know what? I told my mom the same thing when I was little. No matter what you do, Mom, you can't keep a man. It was what I was taught by my mother. I replayed it and taught it to my daughter. And then she turned around and told me while I was doing my journey, and she screamed it at me. You can't even keep a man, she said, word for
So
word.
like a derogatory thing she's saying about you?
Yep.
Okay.
You can't even keep a man because I lost the person that I was with.
Wow.
And I sat with it.
That's heavy.
And I felt it. And I felt it move. And I've had recent experiences that are very similar. So everything drives our decisions that we've been through. And it's silly to say, you know what everyone's doing right now? We're all running from the inevitable. We're all running from the darkness, the depth, the emotion, the experiences, but that's what we're fucking here for. We're literally here to feel this experience. And everybody's running from it. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It's all nervous system related. We're here to ground into it, to look at it. So I went back to that inner child. And I visually saw myself picking myself up off the ground and saying, you know what? You're good enough. And I will never leave you. Anyone that's ever been abandoned, the solution is to stop abandoning yourself. That's the only solution.
Wow.
You don't control if people leave. You don't control anything except for the perception.
Okay, so how do you then reconcile the idea, the reality that we do have influence, though? I can't control if somebody leaves.
We can co-create.
But I have influence.
We do have influence, but you still can't make someone stay if they don't want to be there. And you'll never make the horse drink the water.
That's true.
So here's that not willing to let go and surrender, right? It shows up with everybody. We've all been through. I don't want to let go because I don't know what's going to happen. The unknown, it's so scary, but it's all neurochemical. It's all amygdala. It's fight or flight response. So when someone says, you can't do that, watch me. When my body starts to resist, I lean in. I don't let it pull me back because I'm self-conscious and self-aware because I've done the work. So if something makes me uncomfortable, like resistance, I'm like, tell me more. I'm curious. I'm curious why this resistance is here. I'm curious why I have this energy right here in my heart. I'm curious why this happened and this happened. When I start to become curious, I'm open. And then I can actually process what's going on. I'm not resisting it. Resistance is nervous system.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah.
I think it would be trite to try to make this funny with current events. We usually do a current events segment.
Oh, I can go from here to there and
Oh, I know, but I don't know if the listener should have to, is my saying.
yeah.
So
That's fine. I mean, this is a current event. This is the only moment we have.
there it is.
Talk about current events.
There it is. Hey.
Well, do you mind if I
Yeah, go
interrupt
ahead.
on this? I've worked with Felicia personally over the past week and helped me release that because I dealt with a lot of similar things. I carried a burden that I was never good enough. And I carried it up until about a week ago. And she allowed me to see me for who I am and completely remove that from me, just like that. And that's all it takes.
Wow.
It's awareness.
Yeah, he had shared with me some of the emotions in the release, and it was powerful.
Yeah.
All right, so if people want to work with you, where do they find you?
Currently, limitless_Felicia Marie on Instagram.
Okay. That's the best and only?
That's the best place right now.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. I'll have a website soon that they can go to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of concluding thought you would like to share?
Yeah, there is. I would love to just invite anyone that's listening to maybe consider that everything that happened to them in their lives, every piece of pain and shame and guilt, every experience that you think was wrong, or that you think, why did this happen to me? Or that you think, why am I even here? To open yourself up to understanding that every moment that you've had is a gift. It's a gift for your future. And I feel like we're slight proof of that in this moment.
Yeah.
Right? That if one can go from what you've been through in life and be this great and this talented and this amazing, and if I can go from 25 compounded traumas in my life and be able to provide for my kids after I've been homeless 7 times, get out of a sexual abuse that I thought I would never be able to let go of. If I can do that, I really believe anything is possible for anyone listening.
So it is.
So it is.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll talk more off mic.
Yeah.
But thank you for your openness on this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great.
Bye, Felicia.
Got him. You had to say it, didn't you?